Hi, I'm Mila, and I'm going to read a book to you that I got from the Great Road Bookshed, which is in Acton, Massachusetts. And I picked out a Newbery Halloween, and it has several stories in it. And it's called Newbery Halloween because these are all stories that won the Newbery Award, which is an award given to an outstanding children's book. These are short stories, and they are selected by Martin H. Greenberg and Charles G. Hua. And so the one that we're going to read tonight is called Witch Girl by Elizabeth Coatsworth. It was a windy autumn night with clouds blowing across the stars. Slowly and wearily, 5 travelers moved down the moorland road. "Aren't we ever going to come to a house, Uncle Philip?" the little girl asked, trying to stifle a sob. "Patience, Anne," said the young man. Her father, at the head of the little procession, was leading the old white plow horse on what his wife rode with the youngest child in her arms. "Now," he said bitterly, "the people at the last inn told us that we should come to a shelter long before this." Suddenly the little girl came closer to her uncle. "What was that?" she asked in terror. "It sounded like a dog howling." "Or a wolf," his father mumbled. Philip stooped down and picked up Anne in his arms. "I'll carry you now." Without halting, they went on, even though the white horse pulled back at the bit and began to sweat and shake. Suddenly the horse shied. Out of the shadows a figure appeared, walking toward them. Unnoticed, the moon had risen. Now there was light enough for the travelers to see that the newcomer was a young girl in a dark cloak with dark hair blowing about her face. She seemed to be out of breath. "Oh, we heard you coming," she said. "My grandmother, my 2 aunts, we live in a little house only a mile from here. They are making everything ready for you." "How kind!" the woman on the horse exclaimed. "And for you to have run to meet us, too. What is your name, my dear?" The girl hesitated for a moment. "They call me Pretty," she said. "An unusual name," said the woman, "but it suits you. Do let us go on, John. Poor Whitey is so tired that he shivers all the time." "Walk with us," said Philip to the girl. "Whitey seems afraid of everything tonight, and you're a stranger. But if you're back here, he won't see you." The girl fell into step beside him, and their eyes met in the moonlight. "You look tired," said Pretty. "Let me carry the little girl." "No, I'm all right. Anne's too heavy for you." Excuse me. The child buried her face in her uncle's shoulder. She seemed afraid. The little boy in his mother's arms woke with a cry. "What's the matter, darling?" "Crows were pecking at my face, Mother." "That was only a bad dream, dear. Soon you are going to be safe in a house," his mother soothed him. Only she seemed to be entirely unafraid. Something passed overhead. "What was that?" Philip asked. Pretty broke off. "Only a bird. It looked very queer and long, almost like a broom. The moonlight plays strange tricks. It must have been a night heron with a long bill." "Yes," said Philip, "it must have been a heron," and they walked on again. The woman on the white horse began singing a lullaby, her head bent over the drowsing child. The others walked on in silence. Now and then Whitey snorted, as though still afraid. Over the long moor they saw lighted windows still far off. "Now we shall be all right," said the woman. "How good you have been to help us, Pretty." "But I'm not good," said Pretty, twisting her hands. "My real name is Pretty Spella, and I am learning to be a witch." Her eyes looked frightened. "A witch!" everyone exclaimed. "Not much good as a witch," Pretty confessed. "I don't like mixing the brews or making spells to hurt people, but they're raising me to be a witch just the same." "I'm sure you're a dear good girl," said the young woman. "If you're in trouble, perhaps we can help you." "Oh, thank you," said Pretty. She hesitated, and then her words came in a breathless rush. "I was an orphan, and the fat witch called Horrible took me when I was little and has brought me up. She's good to be in her way, but Hagchaser hates me because I won't pat Hop in the Fire, her toad. She wants to turn me into a toad." "Mercy me," said the young mother, and Philip exclaimed suddenly, "We'll take care of you." "At least forewarned is forearmed," said Anne's father. "Now this young lady had better tell us what we can do to save ourselves if she knows." "I know some things about spells, but not everything," said Pretty, who spoke with more confidence since everyone was acting in such a friendly manner. "In the first place, the house you will see isn't a real house. It's made from a square of thistles bewitched, and the 3 witches won't look like themselves at all, but like nice country women. Even Grimalkin will have a ribbon around her neck. Pretty went on telling how she knew, with her face very white and earnest in the moonlight, and her eyes very large and bright, and her hair softer than shadows. Don't let the children out of your sight for a moment, Pretty warned them. Whoever eats a single crumb will be in their power. Remember, don't sip nor sup. But if you don't stop at the cottage, they'll send wolves to pursue you, so surround you with fire or some awful sorcery. And while you were talking, I will try to find the spell book. It takes different shapes, sometimes large, sometimes small, but it is always oblong. They can't any of them make spells without it. Our only hope lies in destroying the book, and then they will be powerless and you can escape. Yes, said Philip, and when we leave, Pretty will come with us, and I am going to marry her. Pretty didn't say yes, and Pretty didn't say no, but in the darkness she flushed as red as a rose. But only Philip noticed. We must go on, said the woman on the horse. They'll be waiting. John, take Anne and let Philip and Pretty lead Whitey. Everything will be all right. They were met at the cottage door by 3 nice-looking old ladies in fresh dresses of sprigged calico. One old lady was rather fat, one old lady was rather small, and the 3rd old lady was tall as a maypole. What of that? There was a black cat by the hearth asleep on a cushion, and the brooms in the corner behind the door gave a rattle all by themselves when the strangers came in. But what of that? If the fire seemed to talk to itself, and the tea kettle whistled like a blackbird, and a big toad hopped hastily off the step as they approached, these things might happen anywhere. Whitey, who appeared too frightened to whinny, was fastened to the hitching post by the door, and the travelers all went into the low room, bright with candles and warm with fire. And how the 3 old ladies welcomed the newcomers! How they helped them off with their cloaks and brought out chairs by the fire for them. How they admired the beautiful children. You must be hungry, said the fat old lady. Oh, no thank you, we have eaten, said the young mother, smiling. The little white-haired lady, no larger than a 6-year-old child, climbed into a stool and gave a plate heaped with cookies and tarts from the shelf. Now, I know you'll all want some of my sweets, she said. There are blackberry tarts and blueberry cookies, and the little ones are sprinkled with black walnuts. Take your pick, my bird, she said to the little boy on his mother's lap. But his mother gently pulled back his hand. Eating at night gives him bad dreams, she said. But you're too old to dream, aren't you, honeysuckle? Said the little lady, sliding close to Anne, who stood by the fire. No, thank you, ma'am, said Anne, looking wistfully at the tarts. It's good manners to take one, child. Shall I, father? Asked Anne. Her father shook his head. Eating at night doesn't agree with Anne either. Look out! Exclaimed the cat. The 3 old ladies immediately stopped what they were doing and looked about the room wildly. There was Pretty in a corner, reaching toward a cobweb overhead on which sat a black, rather oblong-looking spider. Let that alone! Shrieked Horrible, waving her arms at Pretty Spella. Stop! Stop! Shrilled little Scritz. It was Hag Chaser who gave a thin, long leap across the room toward the girl, reaching out with her clutching fingers. Philip stepped in front of Pretty with his staff raised. Keep back, he cried. Brooms, brooms, help! Shrieked the 3 old ladies together, and instantly 3 brooms hopped from behind the door and made for Philip and the girl immediately with great speed. But swifter still, a 4th broom with a red handle came running up from another corner and barred their path. While the young mother clutched her little boy, and John picked up Anne and carried her out of the way, the battle raged. The old lady shrieked and the brooms fought, handle clashing against handle. Philip joined the defense of the red broomstick against the others, while the cat yowled and bit his ankle, and the toad came huffing and puffing through the hole in the wainscot. But Pretty had seized the spider, web and all, and still protected by Philip and the red-handled broom, she gained the hearth and flung the oblong-shaped creature into the flames. Instantly, the fire leaped up into the chimney throat, the brooms fell with a clatter to the floor, and the candles winked low and rose again. Hop in the fire huffed and puffed back through the hole, Grimalkin returned to her cushion, and the 3 old ladies began to eat their aprons, set their aprons straight, and fluff up the ribbons of their white caps. Oh, dearie me, whimpered little Scritz. What will become of us now? No one will fear us, mumbled the fat one, called Horrible. We'll starve, moaned Hag Chaser. The young woman looked troubled. "Can't you just go on living here?" she said. "It's such a nice cottage." "But how are we to maintain ourselves, madam?" said Horrible crossly. "Couldn't you weave?" "I used to weave cloth before I wove spells," said Hag Chaser unexpectedly. "And Skritz made rag rugs very nicely long ago when she was young." "My specialty was linen. That, too, was long ago," added Horrible, "but I still remember." The three old ladies became quite enthusiastic as they talked. "It will be a change," said Skritz. "Anything for a change. And we're very near the road. We should get good trade." "I will send you my cookbook, and you will find it much more fun than a spell book, I know," said the young mother. "How kind you are, madam!" exclaimed little Skritz, making an effort to smile. "And now you'd better all get getting on. The village is only a mile beyond us. You go too, pretty Spella, with your fine young man by your side." "Yes, goodbye," said Hag Chaser. "I always said you'd be our ruin, girl." "You weren't cut out for a witch, ever," said Horrible kindly. "This new form of life will fit you better, so run along, my dear." The travelers were glad enough to go. No sip nor sup had they taken. Whitey, too, was glad to leave the little cottage behind, and Pretty walked with her young man's arm about her, carrying with her the faithful broom with the red handle. "Oh, not for riding, of course," she assured Philip. "I'm done with all that, and the poor thing is only an ordinary broom now anyway. But we did have some wonderful rides together. It's not wrong for me to remember them, is it?" "Certainly not," said Philip. "What a good fight it put up tonight. I shall buy a silver hook for it, and it shall hang on our kitchen wall in the place of honor when we are married." Well, the end. This is from the Newbery Halloween book, and I've got several more stories I can read to you. And so stay tuned, and you will see more. I also am going to read a couple stories from Awesome Friendly Spooky Stories, and maybe Katie Culhane is another one I might read. And later on, there's other stories all the time that I might read from the Bookshed. So keep tuned and have a good night. Bye!